Hello, everybody. Welcome to Spirit Coffee Talk. We're all very happy that you're back and joining us. If this is the first time you're here, welcome. My name is Lisa Richmond, and we have Ginette and Elyse, and the three of us meet every Friday for coffee, and we talk all things spirit, whether it be the current kind of energies that are playing out currently, or we have a lot of stuff that comes up with questions about connection to spirit, connection to ourselves, and our journey here as our spiritual selves. So welcome. If you are returning, welcome back. Thank you for tuning in. So today we had a question come in that we wanted to talk about because it's applicable to everybody, I feel. So what we were kind of talking about, brief overview, is when we experience other people going through it. So whether it be something that's come up in a karmic kind of movement, or you can see that they're going through it, or they might be in a karmic kind of feedback loop, and we can see it as observers from the outside and almost know and can observe, whether it's intuitively or just by experience, kind of what they're going through, or something that would really help them kind of move through it, or if it is kind of like a karmic lesson, yet we're sitting here watching them bang themselves into a door over and over again. What do you do? What do you do when you're observing it and they haven't necessarily asked you for your opinion on it? So, I mean, I really think whether it's like an individual experience or whether we're watching it in a group dynamic, whether we can see it in much more of like an enmeshment dynamic, whether it's with our friends or at work and like a coworker kind of vibration, or whether it's within your marriage or something not as close, I really feel like we are able to see these kind of karmic cycles play out, or whether it's like the interaction of two or more people playing out, and you're either intuitively guided with it, observing it, or you're right into it. What do you do when you're an observer? Great question.
Yeah, very good question.
Because people are playing out their karmas like crazy right now as we ascend, right? So what do you guys think? Well, that's a great applicable question for so many people.
I think to start it off, I think there are sometimes where we are given an opportunity to play an active role in helping them move through their karma. But there's other times where we are not given the ability to play that active role, and we have to kind of pull back and allow them to play out their karma.
Yes.
And those are two very different things. It's not just like a black or white answer within that either. So it's a complex journey, but here's the thing that I want to really point out. Regardless of what your role is in it, even as just the observer, you are connected to that person's journey in even the observation for a reason, because you're learning something.
Definitely.
And sometimes we, by design on the other side, get to be an observer of someone else's journey because it's going to give us lessons, learning, and wisdom, but that our soul didn't need to take on as the primary character. So even in the things that challenge you in observing someone's journey, there's lessons in it for you. And sometimes if we can hold on to that, we have a greater ability to kind of step back instead of being frustrated or judgment-based or whatever that may be.
That's right.
Yeah.
And even if we have experienced similar situations and we've gone through it and we learned a certain lesson with it, and we're observing somebody else going through it, maybe their lesson in it isn't the same as ours. And it's allowing our ego to step back and kind of look at it and be like, interesting how this is coming up for me to observe again, especially when they don't ask you for help. That's a real big one, because we tend to, especially if there is like that connection, either we've been through it or it deeply affects us or it triggers us in a way. We can take a look and be like, oh, what is this reflecting to me? What is this person's experience reflecting back to me in order for me to see, experience, and whether it's transmute or, go through on your own, because again, there'll be a lesson in it. There'll be a lesson in it for sure.
Yeah. I know there's some experiences I've had with people in their journeys where I have wanted to fix it, and I have tried to fix it for them. And unless it is actually my window where I can, most of the time I can't. Right. And that was a hard one for me to really let go of, because
That is a
I'm like,
hard
I
one.
want to help, right? Like, let me help. Let me just do it for you. I'll do it. I know how to do this one. And you can't. There are just times that you cannot. And I think that's something that I've learned to kind of surrender, even with my kids now. They have been one of the greatest teachers of that, is the value of the hiccups that they have. Like, say they're dealing with an anxiety. And I used to have a ton of anxiety when I was first opening up to my gift. Like at 17, it was epic anxiety. It was crippling. And when I see my kids having to deal with certain aspects of anxiety, instead of just fixing it for them, or like, here, just let me do this, let me take away the trigger, let me whatever, having to walk beside them so they can move through it and learn through it. And sometimes those opportunities of like having them sit in it versus, distraction or pulling them out of it or something, like, what do you feel in this moment? What is it teaching you? This is hard, but you're learning this, and all of that. They have been the greatest teachers of what it actually is to step out of somebody else's life path
Yep.
or karmic cycle. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. And it's given me a lot of perspective on different times where maybe I looked to somebody else to fix my thing,
Fix.
or I'm like, fix it, or spirit, tell me what to do. Right? Like, spirit is the best at being the ones that are like, sorry, this is your journey and your cycle. And it's given me such great perspective. So yeah.
That's really interesting, because yes, children are such big teachers. And to be honest, they're also the ones who, even if they say, what am I supposed to do? Blah, blah, blah. And then you start giving them some tools, they don't actually want to hear it. They don't,
It's true.
especially when they're 16 and they don't want your advice at all. Oh, I see. That's a rhetorical question. I am to step back here and honestly create space for them to like sort it out.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they feel like the energy is coming in where they expectation, where they should be figuring it out, or if they should be feeling it better, or they know that you know what to do, if you just like actually remove your energy from that in compassion, you actually create this loving space for them to like maneuver through it. It's almost like creating a larger room with nicer lighting for them to be able to like sift through it a bit, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes even when they ask you, it's not for you to fix. Like, how often have we talked about it lately too, when we've been available as guides or helpful people, and it's like, but give me my answer, fix it for me, give it to me the way I want to hear it, or do what, so that I feel the way I want to feel. You're the one who's supposed to make this happen for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that can be deeply triggering for us too, or deeply triggering for the support system, right? But really, some of the best and most helpful healing work that you can do is create that safe place for them to maneuver, to find their answers.
Yeah. How about you, Elyse?
But you, Elyse?
So there's two kind of examples for me that are coming up, and I'll start by saying, maybe it's an unpopular opinion, I don't think it's ever our job to fix or do the things, because even if someone is open, or they're asking, it still requires their own integration, working with, changing of. It's never really in our control or within our scope to change, right? Like, even if somebody comes to you for a reading or for healing work, energetic work, whatever, there has to be an openness, there has to be an integration, and there has to be then some sort of change in behavior and belief system, in, moving of trauma, whatever, after the fact. It's never us, because that's not our
That's why we're
role.
called guides or teachers versus fixers, right?
Yeah. And so, but I think that doesn't mean to say there isn't role for support.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference for me. And, I think of, I've talked before about my dad and his experience, and oh gosh, it would have been like 4 or 5 years before he passed away. In a meditation, he came through and he was like, and it wasn't even in a time where I was really intensely playing this role for him. I definitely did later on, or tried to. I didn't actually. And this always, it would always remind me or come up in my mind when my ego would be like, okay, I'm gonna like do this thing and I'm gonna make him do this and he's gonna go here and da da da. And in this meditation, his spirit came to me, and he was still on this earth. And he said, like, this is my journey and it is not your role to fix it. I know you feel like you can help. I know you feel like you can shift things for me. I will let you know if I need that help, but it is not your role to step in and fix anything. This is my journey, even if it doesn't feel like it's going in the way you want it to.
Sorry, that was his higher self?
Yeah. Before he, about 5 years before he passed away.
Okay,
it came through in a meditation.
Your dad said that? Okay.
Yeah, no, it came through in a meditation. And so in that realm, and this kind of goes into the story of how John came into my life, because his higher self also came through in that meditation, and they are the same but different in a lot of different ways. And so he, lived a very different life before we met. And, with my dad, there was always this desire to fix and to help. And over time, he would come to me with questions or with like, and it was never usually like in a spiritual realm. It was more of a like, healing his heart and the things that were in his experience. But it never, like, anything that I did or said never really took root unless it was like he was ready for it or he wanted it. And he had periods where he was doing so much better, even before he passed, like mental health wise, he was taking strides that were shifting him in a really positive trajectory. And then when I think of, my partnership with John, and we've both done so much learning, and there's been so much since we've come together in this life, and he's very open to learning and growing. And yet usually if I'm like, let me tell you what to do because, maybe I've gone through this, or like I was the more woo one when we met, he's open to it from a brain perspective, but it's not going to land unless he's in a place where he's ready for it. 100%. And anytime I've been like, let me tell you what I think you should do here, usually it would annoy them, just like it does to me too.
Bird.
It's like, ugh, no. And then, in their own time, it's like, oh, I did this meditation and this was so helpful, or, or I've been meditating more.
With all the stuff that they're so excited about that they've realized, and you're like, in your head, you're like, I talked to you about this, like,
yeah. And I'll be honest,
months.
He's done that with me too. He went through a lot of physical health challenges, and he's really, on the other side of a lot of those things. Whereas I'm really kind of digging deep into my stuff, as we talked about last week. And so now I'm turning to him being like, oh gosh, like I was giving you this advice on, you should do this and your mindset, blah, blah, blah. And now I'm like, I don't want to fucking hear that from anybody. Kindly
don't
stop.
Tell me my business.
Tell me what to do. But all to say, one of the things that I've really, in my healing journey, and I'll, speak from my own experience now, whether it was grief, whether it was physical healing, whether it was spiritual, whatever, sometimes when people are coming, even if they're coming to us with something, they don't want your help. They just need the space to move through it on their own. Yeah.
Yes.
And so one of the things that I try to either sense into, or if I don't feel like I know very well, is saying like, do you want suggestions and support, or do you want me to just hold space for you? Because if it's, and I'm not perfect at this, so I don't, anybody who's my friend who's like, you don't ask me that. Sorry, I'm working on it. But I also, we try to sense into it a little bit too. And sometimes it's obvious, and sometimes it's not. But it's this idea of like, do you just need a space to like get the shit off your chest? To be heard, to feel whatever you're feeling, that's what I talk about all the time, is like, feel your shit, feel what's coming up for you. That's usually the way through your karmas. So if you've got stuff that you're trying to work through, or you're supporting somebody who's trying to work through their stuff, And we're coming in and trying to be like, let me tell you this thing and let me tell you that thing. It's so well-meaning and it's maybe not wrong, but we're cutting off their ability to feel through it, and through that feeling have those understandings of what it means for them. Because we can't know, even, mediums, intuitive channelers, we can have an idea and feel their energy and get in it, but like, we don't live in their bodies, we don't live in their minds, we don't live with their traumas and their experiences and their joys. And so we can never really know what another person needs. We can only either hold space and allow them to move through that. And when they are really desiring that information, we can offer support, we can offer suggestions, we can offer intuitive pieces. But then at the end of the day, it's still for them to do something with and move forward.
Definitely.
I love that you mentioned asking them, because when you said that, I was reflecting on different experiences I've had, and it is so true. Even in me being the asker or somebody asking me, in that moment of permission, the person giving the response, when they say, yes, I do want to know, they're so much more open to it.
Oh,
Even
yeah.
if they've come to you hoping for answers, they still open up yet another level. And I've seen
Definitely.
that, but I've also experienced that. Like, I know, Elyse, times when you're like, do you want me to give you some insights? I'm coming to you hoping for insights, but in the ask, I then open yet another layer where I'm willing to receive on this bandwidth versus this bandwidth. So there's something in that communication of the ask and then the acceptance that allows like more ease in that. And if you get the no, I just need space to vent, it then also takes the pressure off the one holding that space for feeling they need to give answers. Because I think that's another thing, is we're so primed, and I'm curious where this comes from. I'm trying to think of it, but we're so primed in many ways to be fixers. And so that's why even in conversation, people often aren't listening to what's being said. They're already thinking of what they're going to say to provide an answer, a fix, a conclusion, or whatever. We're so primed to be fixers versus sitting there in the muck with someone and just being.
Hey, so that's what Spirit was talking to me about too. Same thing when Elyse was talking. And it's interesting. We are primed to do that, but some a lot more than others. Because we've developed maybe in younger years or old situations in our like human experience and consciousness, almost like a compensatory strategy in order to make ourselves feel really the depths of what we're all trying to feel as humans is accepted and loved, right? So like what kept coming up when Elyse is talking was like an affirmation, like my worthiness and lovability is not dependent upon how well I can heal, help, or problem solve for other people. So again, like my lovability and worthiness is not dependent upon how well I can heal, fix, or help others.
I so agree. And I think there's another from a human layer. Well, no, that's human too.
That is very human. That's
it's
like
very
my
human. Yeah.
human self that has to say that.
Yeah. And I think another piece of that human experience, and I really noticed this going through grief with my dad, is that like there's nothing you can say to fix somebody that you love has died, right? And you're going through that grief process. There's not one thing that one person can do, say, feel, whatever. And even as a medium, knowing that he still exists in another plane, like, and I remember saying that to Ginette when it happened, like, this is a crazy experience because I know what I know, and yet my human emotions are like, I don't effing care. But he's not here. And there is stuff that I need to move through at this.
Yeah.
But so I noticed this experience with grief, but I've seen it in other things and I've seen it in myself. And is that I think as we've evolved, we've devolved in certain ways, and now we are now in the process of re-evolving, that we as humans do not know how to hold our own experience in our bodies. And when I say in our bodies, it's not the mind spinning and thinking and it's like the experience of something. And so Lisa, if you're coming to me and you're like, I just need you to hold space for me, that inherently requires me not taking it on, but holding it with you, and it's not for me to think about. And if I don't know how to do that in my own experience, it's hard to do it for somebody else. We want to be like, okay, what can I do to get her out of this feeling, because I just don't want her to feel like this, because I don't want to feel like this. And this is all a very unconscious process, right? But it's this like, and I see it with people that I work with, and I, this was my experience, is like, I could psychoanalyze myself till the cows come home.
Yep.
To be with it and to like feel it, that is a whole different ballgame. And I think that that's what's happening when we have discomfort with holding space for somebody else and holding them in their emotion and not trying to fix, is like, we're just all kind of in the muck together. And again, I'm not saying take it on, that's different, but it's like being present with it. And if I can't do that in my experience, and that's nobody's fault, we've just not been taught it, right? It's like when we're little kids, you're okay, that's fine. You hurt yourself, you're okay, don't cry, it's fine.
That's one of my biggest triggers, is the whole, you're okay, it's not that bad, you're okay.
Yeah. And I think we're now, as a society,
I'm like,
as a society, we're starting to realize like, oh shit, that's not actually how we're going to heal and be healthy and happy, is just by like psychoanalyzing ourselves, or trying to fix, or trying to, get to the, the end result. It's like, to go through it, you gotta go through it. And that means like feeling it. And I think we just are all relearning how to do that.
In that process of relearning it, one thing I've learned a lot from the somatic practices that you've taught me, Elyse, is how to hold space for not only myself to either go into something or just sit with something, but that has taught me how to hold space for somebody else independently. And the imagery I could say is like, what I would have done before, if I was holding space for somebody, I would have jumped into the mud with them. Like if they're in a mud pit, I would have jumped in and I'm covered in mud. No matter what I'm wearing, say I had a beautiful dress on, they needed me, I need to get in the mud. And then that causes like a reaction in me, because now I ruined my dress. Okay.
Yeah.
But what somatics has taught me though, is in that moment, I can say, yes, I can hold space for you. Hold on. And I can go put on my grubby clothes and maybe a rain suit and boots, and then jump in the mud with them and hold space. But it's not taking from me to hold that space. Like I can come in more prepared.
Yeah.
Because I'm asking myself what I need first. And I find that having learned that has allowed me to also pull back from wanting to fix or wanting to always give the answer or get the answer. Because I know even in mediumship readings, when I first started, I felt like because I can connect to spirit, I should be able to ask everything and we should be able to get every answer. And if I don't, then I'm letting them down and all of this, where as now I've really learned that like it'll be there or it won't. Totally. And if I don't have the answer, I can still hold space for you in your frustration or your questions. But we can surrender together.
Even if it's not the answer you want. It's like, this is what it is. Like
and the same thing applies to watching other people's journeys. Like there have been times where I have had to consciously release my desire for someone else to attain something, to understand something. Even with my family, I can say, like, even with Trevor, when mediumship was really starting to take off, I needed him to understand it. I needed him. And it was like I was pushing it on him. And then I surrendered, like, it's not his journey.
Yeah.
And in my surrender over the years, he's come to understand it so much more.
Right.
Now we can chat in a way that he doesn't have to be a medium, but he's observed enough in his own time that we can have a conversation.
Yes.
So it's like, it's these deep,
surrender,
frustrating lessons, but beautiful lessons that have taught me that act of allowing other people's journeys to move along.
Yeah. Like two big key points in that whole thing, like everything essentially that we've talked about, is number one, you ultimately can't be in control of anybody else's journey, right? And so the more that somebody is doing something where it's coming to the surface and you're really seeing it and you want to ask yourself, why is this coming up so strong for me right now? Like, why is this really, even, I want to say the word triggering me, but like, I know that that word might not be helpful for some people. So it's like, why does this keep coming up, and why does it feel like I am so attunely like connected to what this experience is for them? Because there'll be a lesson in there for you. Number one. Number two is that the more that we want to actively, especially with people like family or like close friends or romantic partners or children or something, where you really want to see them make that change, you really want them to make the choice that ultimately would help them in your mind, you think you do. But it's like, it goes back to, how are you going to be the best illustrator of that? Is just living in your alignment. Because if they're struggling and they're learning lessons and whatever it might be, maybe outside of their alignment or outside of their energy field. So like, the best way is for you to walk your talk, be in your alignment, do the things that align with you, like be in your best self, highest vibration, take your own advice and really live it. And that is every single time the best way to teach others, but also see whether or not where they are in their journey, they might not be side by side with you. And that's okay. It's okay that they're learning something that isn't parallel to what you're learning at the moment or what you have learned. There's no better or worse. It's just a journey. And the more that you can, again, really resist the tendency to want to fix, bring them forward, do this, because if you're doing this, it makes me feel more comfortable with what I'm doing, essentially. And that might be a tough pill to swallow, but truly, like, I mean, we continue to see it, and people continue, if that's a lesson that we're to learn, people are going to continue showing up to reflect that back to us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's so much wisdom in the cycles that show themselves to you, even if they are from others. That's such a good statement.
100%.
Yeah, that's such a good
Yes.
statement.
There's an interesting piece in that, which I so agree, is like, our desire to fix is our nervous system popping into action, right? Like when we talk about fight, flight, freeze and the nervous system, it often gets kind of a bad rap, but it's necessary, right? It's what drives us forward to do certain things, to take action in certain ways, right? All of us are probably to a degree in our fight, flight nervous system because we're rising to the occasion and bringing forth something. The idea, though, is that it oscillates back down into rest, digest when you're not required to be acting on something. And when we're constantly in that muck with the other person, we're like, hey, now I'm messy and I'm dirty and let's go and figure it out and get clean. We're bringing ourselves into that same nervous system response as they are. And it's a well-known scientific piece that we attune to each other. So we're feeding into a cycle for somebody. And it's not to say you have to be perfect in it, but it's just to be something that, we're aware of. Because when we step back and say, okay, I'm going to observe this person, I'm going to hold the space for them, and we're staying more in a regulated space of not trying to fix, not trying to do, but just allowing them to work through their process, inherently that will, especially over time, and when it's somebody that we're, often in energetic space with, doesn't have to be like physical space, there's a nervous system attunement that happens and we start to regulate to one another. And so if Lisa, you can be for me that like regulated space where you're like, okay, I'm just going to hold you in this, my nervous system is going to be like, oh, well, she's calm, maybe I can be calm, maybe I can look at this from a different perspective and do whatever I need to do with it, because that can be an infinite number of things. And usually that outcome looks a lot different than when we're all trying to fix from like a scurrying place
100%,
of
going
over
outside of our authentic energy. And there's nothing more powerful than the energetic frequency of authenticity.
And from an energetic perspective too, like that ripples out, right? We see other people doing things and we're like, oh, where do I get some of that? Like, what are they doing that they, like we're inherently drawn towards what feels like, where we want to go. And so again, it's like, if we can just, doesn't mean we don't help, But if we can just stay within our own energy of what that looks like, I think change happens a lot faster because there's a lot less resistance.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I
Yeah.
really like that statement. And while you were talking, my guides came in to say that even asking this question of how do we let go of other people's journeys, their karmas, and like step aside is detangling us from this greater ball of drama. So there's like a central like whirling kind of ball of drama that keeps us connected into, and what we're trying to do is kind of unfurl that ball into the various strings, or maybe we kind of unfold it and it turns into a beautiful like spiderweb shape, right? Right now it's a ball of muck, but it becomes like a structured ball of connection. What we're doing in allowing people to figure out their own is we're not getting all tangled in theirs. We're pulling our string back, which actually allows them the opportunity to pull theirs back, which allows them to detach from somebody else's, maybe that allows them to pull theirs back. And we're starting to step back into this cosmic or humanitarian web of consciousness, which also helps to raise the entire frequency, which is what we're doing. Which eventually they're saying is where it leads to like telepathy and all those kinds of like instant communication that's not getting mucked up in denser things like karmas.
Yeah.
They're like, you guys don't get telepathy until you stop your drama.
I know, totally. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, essentially.
That is exactly the visual that I got when I was working through the concept of enmeshment. It's exactly the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Because then it's like when you're so used to the energy of the intertwining part of it, it's like it attaches your perception to being accepted. So it's like, even though it's not necessarily from your greatest good, it's what you're used to. So you've identified being accepted, loved, whatever, based on the enmeshment of the either codependency or whatever it is that keeps you into that ball. And that when you start to unwind it, it can be hard to watch it happen, because you're like, oh my gosh, if I'm not feeling their feelings like my own, or I'm not standing up to fix that, it is really pushing up against my perception of being accepted. And that's like a human need, right?
Yeah.
And so just realize that sometimes unraveling out of a codependency or an enmeshment in an energetic form within relationships can feel really difficult at the beginning, because it pushes up against that subconscious part of ourselves that feel like maybe abandonment or rejection. And these are these human things that get the survival mode again, right? But just understand that unwinding from it allows ourselves to be beautifully authentic into our own energy, therefore can carry it out for our own experiences, which actually enriches relationships for our highest and greatest good.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Okay, well, on that note, does anybody else have anything left to drop before the end of this really great conversation? Great question.
Yeah.
Great question. Yeah, so thanks so much for everybody for tuning in. And this is a really thought-provoking conversation, and I'd really like to hear any feedback that anybody else has, or maybe drop in the comments what this might have brought up for you, or old, like, or not old, or like current experiences that you might be going through that might help others go through it too. So this is a really big thing. As we are ascending and moving into like kind of a higher vibration, we're going to be untangling from these enmeshments or karmic cycles that we've been in for a lifetime, and that can feel really difficult. So a lot of compassion for people that are really going through this, and that our hearts are with you, and that we're all here for each other to create that space. So comments here, and also we have the Avalon Spirit Facebook page group. So jump on there. There's a lot of interaction there, and a lot of space being held by other lovely lovely spirit workers and individuals that join us in this journey. So thanks again, and all the love and compassion sent out from all of us to all of you. So have a wonderful week. Till next time.
Bye.